I was running a bead of molten steel at 3,000 degrees when my daughter-in-law's voice echoed through the workshop, telling my son it was time to throw the garbage out, and she meant me. Before we get into the heat of this mess, I want to know who I am talking to. Drop your city or country in the comments right now. I love seeing where you are all listening from. Now, let us get back to the reality of my home. My name is Helen. I am 58 years old, and my hands are permanently stained with machine grease and iron dust. I am a master welder. I spent 35 years crawling through industrial pipes, repairing bridge supports, and breathing in the sharp electric smell of ozone just to build a life for my son, Leo. When my husband passed away, I took the life insurance money, bought a massive abandoned brick warehouse on the edge of town, and spent 10 years converting it into a custom home. The front half is a beautiful open-concept living space with exposed brick and massive timber beams. The back half is my sanctuary, a fully equipped metal fabrication shop where I run my own custom welding business. It is loud, it is dirty, and it is entirely mine. 14 months ago, Leo called me. He sounded tired, his voice tight with anxiety. He and his new wife, Sabrina, had overextended themselves. They leased luxury cars they could not afford, rented an apartment that consumed his entire paycheck, and were drowning in debt. Because I am a mother, I did not hesitate. I cleared out the massive loft upstairs, a space larger than most apartments, and told them they could stay rent-free until they caught their breath. That was my first mistake. You see, Sabrina is a social media brand consultant. She builds aesthetics for a living. Everything in her life is curated, spotless, and beige. I, on the other hand, am a woman who leaves steel-toed boots by the door and washes her hands with heavy-duty pumice soap. The clash was not immediate, but it was a slow, deliberate erosion of my presence in my own home. It started with small, polite requests. She asked me to stop walking through the main living room in my work clothes because the metallic smell gave her headaches. Then she threw away my favorite heavy ceramic coffee mugs, replacing them with fragile, paper-thin glass cups because my mugs did not match the minimal vibe she was trying to establish. I watched my son shrink into the background, avoiding conflict at all costs, while this woman systematically tried to sanitize my existence. The tension reached its boiling point on a Tuesday evening. I was standing at the kitchen island, slicing tomatoes for a salad. I had just finished a 12-hour shift fabricating a custom iron gate for a client. My shoulders ached, and I just wanted a quiet meal. Sabrina walked into the kitchen, her heels clicking sharply against the polished concrete floor. She stopped, staring at the cutting board. She sighed, a long, exaggerated sound of pure exhaustion. "Helen, could you please use the plastic cutting board?" she asked, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "That wooden one is porous. With your hands, well, it is just not sanitary." I stopped slicing. I looked down at my hands. They were scrubbed raw, clean, but permanently calloused and scarred from decades of hard labor. I looked up at her perfectly manicured nails. "My hands built this kitchen, Sabrina," I said quietly. "They are clean." She offered a tight, patronizing smile. "I am just thinking of Leo's health, Helen. We have sensitive stomachs." She took a bleach wipe from a container and began aggressively wiping down the counter right next to my cutting board, the harsh chemical smell completely overpowering the scent of the fresh vegetables. Leo walked in right at that moment, loosening his tie. He looked at me, then down at his shoes. "Smells good, Mom," he mumbled, refusing to acknowledge his wife practically disinfecting the space I was standing in. I did not argue. I ate my dinner in silence, washed my plate, and retreated to my workshop. The next morning, I was under my welding hood. The blue light of the TIG torch was blinding, the rhythmic hum of the machine drowning out the world. I had my heavy leather jacket on, focusing entirely on the puddle of liquid metal I was guiding along a seam. A few months ago, Leo had connected my shop's surround sound speakers to the home's smart network so I could listen to music without taking off my gloves. Suddenly, the music stopped. A loud chime echoed through the shop, followed by a voice. It was not music. It was an audio message Sabrina was trying to cast to the living room television, but she had blindly selected the workshop speakers instead. Her voice boomed over the industrial speakers, crystal clear and heavy with disgust. "Leo, you need to fix this today. I cannot bring clients here. She smells like a scrapyard. It is embarrassing. I am not raising a family in a mechanic shop. Tell her the warehouse is too big for a woman her age. We need the whole space for my studio. Tell her to move to one of those senior communities. If you do not tell her, I will. She is in the way, Leo. Get rid of her." I released the trigger on my torch. The bright blue arc vanished, plunging the shop into sudden, heavy silence. I slowly pushed my welding hood up. I stood there in the quiet, the smell of burnt metal and ozone lingering in the air. She thought I was a temporary inconvenience in the house I built from ruins. She thought my life's work was an embarrassing hobby. I did not cry. My heart did not race. Instead, a cold, absolute calm settled over me. You do not survive 35 years in a male-dominated, back-breaking industry by being weak. And you certainly do not let a spoiled guest push you out of your own fortress. I walked over to the speaker system and disconnected it from the main house network. I did not mention the recording. I let the silence stretch for 2 full days, watching them operate in my space. I watched Sabrina order expensive takeout while living rent-free. I watched Leo avoid my gaze. Then came Thursday. I came home early from the steel supply yard to find a strange man with a clipboard standing in the middle of my workshop. Sabrina was standing next to him, pointing at my heavy machinery. My hydraulic press, my industrial bandsaw, my welding tables. "Yes, all of this heavy junk will be cleared out by the end of the month," Sabrina was saying to the man. "I want the floors epoxy-coated in a bright white, and we need mirrors along that entire brick wall. It is going to be a lifestyle and wellness studio." The contractor scribbled something on his clipboard. "And the electrical?" he asked. "Oh, it is fully wired," she replied breezily. "The old lady used it for some industrial hobby." "Excuse me," I said. My voice was not loud, but it cut through the cavernous space like a whip. The contractor turned around, startled. Sabrina froze, her face flushing a deep, angry red. I walked slowly across the concrete floor, the heavy soles of my boots echoing loudly. I stopped right in front of the contractor. "I am the owner of this property," I said smoothly, looking the man directly in the eye. "I did not request a quote, and there will be no renovations. Please leave my shop." The man looked incredibly uncomfortable. He glanced at Sabrina, who was stammering, then back at me. He nodded quickly, apologized, and practically ran out the loading doors. I turned to face my daughter-in-law. She crossed her arms, trying to regain her composure, trying to look taller. "You had no right to embarrass me like that," she snapped, her voice trembling with misplaced rage. "This space is completely wasted on you. You are one person, Helen. Leo and I need this room to build our future. You are just being selfish, holding on to all this dirty metal." I stepped closer. I am not a tall woman, but at that moment I towered over her. "Sabrina," I said slowly, emphasizing every single syllable. "You do not pay rent. You do not pay for electricity. You do not buy groceries. You are a guest who has confused my generosity with my surrender. This is a working fabrication shop. It is the reason you have a roof over your head." She scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Oh, please. Leo makes good money. We are just saving. You do not understand how modern careers work." I just looked at her, letting the silence crush her weak argument. "If Leo makes such good money," I replied calmly, "then you will have no problem securing a new place by the end of the weekend. You have until Sunday evening to remove your belongings from my property." Her jaw dropped. "You cannot do that," she shrieked, losing her carefully crafted aesthetic coolness. "You cannot just kick us out." I turned my back to her and walked over to my workbench. I picked up my heavy steel grinder. "I already did," I said over my shoulder. "Now get out of my shop. I have work to do." I turned the grinder on, the loud, grinding scream of metal drowning out whatever tantrum she was throwing. When Leo came home that night, the house was silent, but the tension was thick enough to cut with a torch. He came down to the shop. He looked devastated, rubbing the back of his neck. "Mom, please," he said quietly. "Sabrina is in tears. She says you screamed at her and kicked us out. Why are you being so hostile? We just wanted to talk about utilizing the space better." I stopped what I was doing. I took out my phone, navigated to the smart home app, and pulled up the system's cache. I hit play on the saved audio file. Sabrina's voice filled the shop once again. "She smells like a scrapyard. She is in the way, Leo. Get rid of her." Leo went completely pale. He stared at the floor, unable to look at me. I placed the phone down. I did not scream, Leo. I simply gave her what she wanted. I am removing myself from her presence, and I am removing my financial support from your marriage. You have until Sunday. I did not wait for Sunday to secure my boundaries. Friday morning, as soon as they left for work, I went to my steel racks. I pulled out heavy-gauge steel plates and thick iron bolts. Sabrina thought my skills were a dirty hobby. I decided to show her exactly what this old lady could build. The main house had a standard residential door that connected to my workshop and the back alley. I removed the flimsy doorknob. Using my portable welder, I fabricated a massive industrial-grade steel locking bar right across the door frame. I welded the brackets directly into the structural steel of the building. I installed a commercial deadbolt that required a heavy brass key, a key that only I possessed. I reinforced the exterior loading doors with iron braces. The front of the house was theirs for the weekend, but my shop, my sanctuary, was now a fortified vault. Saturday was moving day for them. They had frantically rented a small U-Haul truck. I stayed in my shop, the thick steel door separating my world from theirs. I could hear the muffled sounds of them dragging boxes, Sabrina's sharp voice barking orders at Leo, the heavy thuds of furniture. I did not go out to help. I did not offer them water. I sat at my workbench, cleaning my tools, feeling the incredible weight of the last 14 months slowly lifting off my chest. Around 4 in the afternoon, the noises stopped. I heard heavy footsteps approach the heavy steel door separating the house from the shop. The handle rattled, then a heavy knock. "Mom?" Leo's voice was muffled. I unlocked the heavy commercial deadbolt and slid the massive steel bar back. I opened the door. Leo stood there, looking completely defeated. The house behind him was empty, stripped of their belongings. "We are leaving," he said. His voice cracked slightly. I looked at my son. I loved him, but I could no longer protect him from the reality of the choices he made. I nodded. "Take care of yourself, Leo," I said softly. Sabrina stood out by the moving truck, arms crossed, refusing to look at the house. She looked furious, entirely stripped of the power she thought she held. She had tried to manipulate a woman forged in fire, and she had burned herself. Leo handed me his house key. I took it, placing it in the pocket of my work jeans. He turned and walked away. I watched as they climbed into the truck and drove off, the engine noise fading down the street. I locked the heavy steel door one last time. I walked through the empty living room. It was quiet. The harsh chemical smell of Sabrina's cleaning supplies was already fading. I went into the kitchen, took out my favorite heavy, stained ceramic mug, and poured myself a cup of black coffee. I walked back out to my workshop, sat in my worn leather chair, and looked around at my heavy machinery, the metal shavings on the floor, the beautiful, raw, industrial reality of my life. I was not in the way anymore. I was exactly where I belonged. If you made it to the end of this story, I want to hear your thoughts. Did I go too far by giving them only 3 days? Or was it exactly what she deserved for trying to take over my home? Let me know down in the comments. I read every single one of them. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you do not miss the next one.